Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week, perhaps unsurprisingly, I'm going to talk about glorious 6mm and why don't you give it a try. So today's video is an earnest request to my viewers: don't discount 6mm before you've had a chance to try it. Last week I went to Joy of 6, a wonderful showcase for what can be achieved with the scale, and I decided that a follow-up vid on the benefits of 6mm was long overdue. So I'm going to start off with some of the common complaints that we've probably all heard at one time or another. You know, the usual refrain, how do you paint something so small? Or my eyes can't cope with 6mm, or 6mm lacks the detail I like, etc, etc. But you also hear, they don't do the range I want, or they don't make a specific unit. Well, I'd like to respectfully suggest that these are misconceptions born of misunderstanding, sometimes ignorance of the scale, and often a little bit of scale prejudice, it has to be said, in a market that is dominated by 15 and 28mm figures. So I'm going to run through a few of what I've considered to be the benefits to 6mm. And first and foremost, you can do bigger battles. Massive battles can be recreated with 6mm. Units look like units because there's a lower figure per man ratio. Brigades and divisional scale battles become so much easier when you're using 6mm, and on bigger tables armies actually have flanks that need to be considered. It adds a whole new dimension to playing certain periods of certain battles that maybe you thought you knew well because you've played them in other scales. Another benefit is that you can play on smaller tables. Many gamers don't have room for a 6x4, indeed mine is only 5 foot by 3 foot. Instead of being limited to just 28mm skirmish games, go smaller in scale so you can go bigger in scope. Larger battles can be played out on much smaller tables. For example, at Joy of 6, Per Broden put on a Lund game at Joy of 6, and it was designed specifically for that typical dining room table sized game space in mind. And and then there's certain rules like DBA, for instance, that's specifically designed for 4x4, so you're able to play big battles on much smaller tables. Then the obvious benefit of 6mm is cost. Simply put, it's cheaper than other scales. It's very cost effective. Pound for pound, it's a great value. A whole army of 100 figures or so, dozens of units, might set you back £30 to £50. In larger scales, you can easily add another 0 to that number. Another one of the big benefits is space. It's so much easier to store and easier to transport a 6mm army. Every gamer I have ever spoken to has a storage problem. And anyone that had run a demo game will understand the problems associated with transporting armies to events. A typical 6mm army will fit in an A4 really useful box, and a large army maybe will fit in 2. Now the other benefit, and this is one that maybe people might be consider controversial, is it's easier to paint. It sounds counterintuitive, but 6mm really is a doddle to paint. I've linked below the Bacchus guide, but it's well worth checking out. If you've ever painted buttons on a 28mm figure, you have the accuracy and the patience to paint 6mm, I promise you. At this scale, the number of buttons on a uniform and the style of cuff is not visible, let alone important. It's a fast way to get lots of units done really quickly. Indeed, I've cranked out whole armies in a couple of months during painting challenge, for instance, and I'm pretty slow compared to other painters. Now, the other benefit is something that's increased more with time. The range of periods has grown and grown and grown. There's different manufacturers have brought out new ranges. Indeed, Bacchus have released their Pony Wars campaign range, expanding what was available even more recently. Manufacturers have all got in on the game, and 3D printing even is making the options available so much greater. And of course there's lots of rule systems designed specifically for 6mm, and a lot of 15mm and 28mm rules can be adapted to play with 6mm. Indeed, at Joy of 6 we even saw 2mm strength and honour being used with 6mm figures. So that's my little rant in favour of 6mm over, but I would say to you, if you really want to find out more and hear a little bit more 6mm propaganda, I strongly recommend checking out the Backhouse website and the excellent and very erudite essay by Peter Berry on the history and the benefits of 6mm. He does a much better job than I'm doing, and his article is very interesting. Again, I'll put a link in the comments bit below, or in the video description bit below. So I'd love to hear what you think. Please join the conversation in the comments below as always. You know, if you're a 6mm aficionado, or whether you're new to it, or whether you're just 6mm curious, I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. And if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from this channel, please tap the bell notification icon. So until next week, stay safe, keep gaming, and of course, keep rolling high.